Our planet hides its oldest roads deep beneath the ocean. The ruins under the sea are the missing pieces of a story that connects us all. The epic tale of humanity's first great migration. By the end of this, you will understand how our ancestors conquered the globe not by land, but by water. We will uncover how entire continents, now vanished beneath the waves, served as superhighways for early explorers. What secrets do these sunken landscapes hold about the courage and ingenuity it took to populate the world? How does the story of a lost city beneath the Indian Ocean change what we know about ancient civilizations? This is a journey to recover the very first chapter of our shared history. What forgotten adventure from our deep past most captures your imagination? This vast tropical expanse was a world in its own right, a lost continent we call Sunderland. For tens of thousands of years, this was not a scattered archipelago, but a single, continuous landmass, a sprawling green carpet stretching from mainland Asia all the way to the islands we now know as Indonesia and the Philippines. Imagine a landscape larger than modern India, teeming with life, a core territory for our early ancestors. They hunted, they foraged, and they spread across this enormous shelf, leaving behind traces of their presence in the form of stone tools that we still find today on isolated mountain peaks, peaks that were once just hills in a vast interior. This entire world was made possible by the immense ice age. So much water was locked away in colossal glaciers that global sea levels plunged, exposing the continental shelf in its breathtaking entirety. Then the world warmed. Starting around 14,000 years ago, the ice melted, and the oceans began their slow, inexorable return. The rising waters did not just redraw the coastline, they completely erased this foundational chapter of the human story. The South China Sea and the Java Sea now blanket what was once a primary stage for human expansion, submerging countless settlements and ancient pathways under deep, silent water. The very success of those early people, their mastery of this vast continent, set the stage for their next great challenge. When the land began to vanish beneath the waves, their descendants would have to look beyond the horizon, to the open ocean itself. But while one continent was slowly drowning, another challenge was being met head-on. To the southeast, a deep and formidable ocean channel separated the lost world of Sunderland from the distant shores of Sahul, the combined landmass of Australia and New Guinea. This was not a place one could simply walk to. It demanded a genuine sea voyage, a journey out of sight of land that stands as one of humanity's first great acts of maritime exploration. How did people with what we would consider basic Stone Age technology cross this vast, open water? The answer likely lies in their profound connection to their environment. They would have used sturdy bamboo rafts, vessels capable of riding powerful ocean currents, guided by a deep, generational knowledge of wind patterns, bird migrations, and the stars. This was no accidental drift with a family swept out to sea on a log. The presence of an entire viable population on the other side tells us this was a deliberate, planned expansion. It was an act of incredible courage and foresight. The proof is etched into the landscape itself, with archaeological sites in northern Australia dated to over 65,000 years ago. This single journey shatters our old assumptions, proving that our ancestors were not just wanderers of the land but intentional masters of the sea. They saw the horizon not as a barrier but as a doorway. And having proven they could cross the deepest divides, their descendants would soon set their sights on an even more impossible frontier, the endless expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The story of the Bering land bridge is a cornerstone of our history books, a vast, frigid plain that once connected two continents. Yet this classic tale of an inland trek across a windswept tundra is only one part of a much richer story. What if the first people to reach the Americas were not just hardy walkers, but also skilled mariners? A compelling alternative is emerging from the depths, a theory known as the coastal migration hypothesis. Instead of a difficult journey through a harsh interior, picture a route along a lush, productive coastline, a veritable superhighway of kelp forests teeming with fish, seabirds, and marine mammals. This coastal corridor would have offered a more reliable and far less arduous path south. The traditional narrative, which placed a culture known as Clovis first, is being directly challenged by archaeological discoveries. Sites along the Pacific coasts of both North and South America are yielding evidence that appears to be older than the Clovis settlements. This forces a dramatic rethinking of the entire map of human arrival. The very first Americans may have been adept boaters, traveling relatively quickly down the western edge of the continent in sturdy watercraft. Their story, their campsites, and their very footprints now lie submerged, waiting on the ancient shoreline that was drowned by the same rising seas that consumed Sunderland. The true evidence for this epic coastal voyage rests silently on the continental shelf, hidden beneath the Pacific waves. This coastal superhighway was paved not with stone but with kelp. Picture a near-continuous ribbon of these immense underwater forests, a vibrant marine ecosystem stretching for thousands of miles from Asia all the way to the Americas. This is the Kelp Highway, a revolutionary idea that completely reframes the peopling of the New World. Instead of a slow, grueling overland trek through a harsh and unfamiliar Ice Age interior, this theory proposes a far more plausible route. Our ancestors were savvy coastal navigators, and they would have found a familiar, protein-rich bounty along these shores. These kelp forests are among the most productive environments on Earth, creating complex habitats that shelter a staggering variety of life. They offered a consistent and reliable food source, abundant fish, nutrient-rich shellfish, and marine mammals, allowing migrating families to travel long distances without ever straying far from sustenance. The technology required was elegantly simple: durable boats for island hopping and coastal travel, along with tools for harvesting the ocean's generosity. This transforms the entire narrative from a story of desperate survival into one of strategic, marine-adapted expansion. How do we find evidence for a civilization of coastal foragers when their entire world is now underwater? The proof is not in grand, sunken cities, but in the subtle, enduring traces they left behind. We search for ancient shell middens, the accumulated remains of countless meals, now resting on drowned shorelines. We look for simple stone tools like finely crafted fishing weights and points, lost or discarded in campsites that have been silent for millennia. To uncover these clues, we must turn to the advanced tools of modern underwater archaeology, technologies that allow us to see through the deep blue veil and recover the first chapter of the American story. To find these lost coastal settlements, we must first learn to see through the water itself. This is the domain of underwater archaeology, a field that has evolved from simple diving expeditions into a sophisticated technological hunt. The search begins not with shovels but with sound. Vessels equipped with side-scan sonar and multi-beam bathymetry glide over vast areas of the continental shelf, emitting acoustic pulses that paint a picture of the seafloor below. These systems act like powerful underwater MRI machines, creating stunningly detailed three-dimensional maps. They can reveal the ghostly outlines of ancient river valleys, long-vanished lakes, and the subtle topographic rises that might have once been islands or campsites, all hidden beneath layers of sand and silt. Once a promising landscape is identified, another tool takes over. A sub-bottom profiler sends lower-frequency sound waves that can penetrate the seabed itself, imaging the layers of sediment and buried geological features. It allows researchers to virtually strip away the water and the accumulated muck of millennia to see the original ground surface, the very terrain our ancestors walked. This remote sensing creates a target list for the next phase of the investigation. Autonomous underwater vehicles, or a UVS, are then deployed. These robotic submarines, pre-programmed to fly precise search patterns, descend into the silent darkness. They use high-resolution cameras and sensors to capture a close-up view of the submerged world, identifying potential artifacts or shell mounds without disturbing the site. For the most delicate work, remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, are sent down, connected to a surface ship by a tether. Piloted by technicians in real time, these robotic platforms can use manipulator arms to carefully collect samples of ancient soil, wood, or stone tools from the seabed. But the final and most demanding step is human excavation. Working in near-zero visibility, often relying solely on touch, archaeologists must perform what can only be described as underwater surgery. They use suction dredges to gently remove layers of sediment, revealing artifacts in their original resting place. It is a process that demands immense patience and skill, where a single careless movement can erase centuries of context. These advanced methods, from the broad sweep of sonar to the precise touch of a diver's hand, form our only window into this drowned world. And what they are revealing is a human past far richer and more complex than we ever believed possible from the safety of the shore. The murky waters of India's Gulf of Khambat hold a secret that challenges the very timeline of civilization. During a routine sonar survey, the seabed revealed something utterly unexpected: the ghostly outlines of a sprawling city. The images showed perfect geometric patterns, grids of streets, and the distinct foundations of large structures, some with what appeared to be staircases leading into the silt. The sheer scale was staggering, suggesting a vast, organized urban center. If this interpretation was correct, this sunken settlement was not just old, it was ancient beyond belief, potentially dating back 9,500 years. That would place its origins thousands of years before the great civilizations of Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley ever arose. The artifacts pulled from the sediment seem to confirm an incredible age, with recovered wood and pottery fragments pointing to a society that thrived when much of the world was still in the Stone Age. This was not just a settlement, it was a potential cradle of civilization lost beneath the waves. Yet, such a monumental claim demands monumental proof, and here the story plunges into deep controversy. The very environment that preserved the site also protects its secrets. The Gulf's waters are notoriously turbulent and choked with silt, reducing visibility to near zero and making systematic excavation a Herculean task. Skeptics were quick to offer an alternative explanation. They argued that the sonar images, while compelling, could be the product of natural geology, the result of ancient river channels or unusual rock formations that merely resemble human construction. The artifacts themselves became a point of contention, with critics suggesting that the powerful currents common to the area could have swept these objects from much later time periods and deposited them together, creating a false archaeological record. A single piece of wood or pottery without the clear, undisturbed context of its original placement cannot tell a definitive story. This is the fundamental dilemma of underwater exploration. The Gulf of Khambat discovery embodies both the breathtaking promise and the profound frustrations of this science. It represents a potential paradigm shift, a clue that a complex urban society existed long before our history books say it was possible. Yet without that crucial, undeniable evidence gathered through meticulous, verifiable excavation, it remains a haunting possibility, a ghost on a sonar screen. It stands as a powerful reminder that the path to rewriting history is not paved with bold claims, but with painstakingly gathered, irrefutable data. The search for our drowned origins is a dance between imagination and evidence, where every potential discovery must survive the most rigorous scrutiny. Far to the north, beneath the churning grey waves of the North Sea, lies the ghost of a European heartland. While tropical continents like Sunderland were submerged by a slow, creeping ocean, the story of Doggerland was one of sudden, violent transformation. For thousands of years, this was not a sea at all, but a vast, inhabited plain connecting the land we now call Britain to the European mainland. This was Europe's own Atlantis, a diverse landscape of rolling hills, winding rivers, lush marshes, and dense forests, teeming with red deer, wild boar, and aurochs. It was home to thriving communities of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who fished its rivers and traversed its trails. For centuries, fishermen trawling the seabed have hauled up more than just fish, their nets bringing up the tangible proof of this lost world, ancient animal bones, finely worked stone tools, and even the occasional human artifact, all pulled from the silt where a continent once stood. The end of this world was swift and catastrophic. Around 8,200 years ago, a colossal underwater landslide off the coast of Norway, known as the Storegga Slide, sent a devastating tsunami racing across the North Sea. This towering wall of water inundated the remaining low-lying plains, finally and irrevocably severing the British Isles from the continent. The story of Doggerland is a stark lesson that the rising seas at the end of the last ice age did not just redraw coastlines, they erased entire countries and the countless personal stories they held. This European example, with its clear geological evidence and recovered artifacts, provides a powerful and sobering model for what we might yet discover on other submerged continental shelves around the world. Off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, the ocean floor holds a riddle carved in stone. Looming from the dark blue depths, the Yonaguni Monument is a colossal structure of sandstone, a terraced complex that looks like a sunken stepped pyramid or the ruins of an ancient plaza. Its sharp 90-degree angles, seemingly perfect staircases, and flat, level surfaces feel too orderly, too deliberate to be a simple act of nature. For those who believe it is a human creation, these features are the architectural fingerprints of a sophisticated culture, a people with the skill and vision to shape rock on a monumental scale. If they are correct, this site would be unimaginably old, constructed around 10,000 years ago when this spot was dry land, a hill overlooking a coastal plain. Its existence would rewrite the history of the Pacific, proving that advanced builders were at work during the very era of humanity's great coastal migrations. Yet the sea guards its secrets well, and nature is a master sculptor in its own right. Geologists offer a compelling counter-narrative, explaining that the rock here is sandstone, a material naturally prone to fracturing along both horizontal and vertical planes. As powerful ocean currents swept across this formation for millennia, they could have selectively eroded these cracks, gradually carving out the blocks, terraces, and steps we see today. The process, known as sheet jointing, can create astonishingly geometric shapes without any human intervention. The debate between these two views is not merely academic, it strikes at the heart of how we interpret our past. Are we seeing a lost temple or a breathtaking natural masterpiece that merely resembles one? This profound ambiguity is the true power of Yonaguni. It forces us to question our own perceptions and the powerful human desire to find our story written on the stones of the deep. It reminds us that the most compelling mysteries are those that hover perfectly between what is possible and what is proven, driving the relentless search for a single, undeniable clue that could tip the scales forever. While technology maps the seabed, the oldest records of these lost worlds have been kept alive not in stone but in story. For countless generations, the oral traditions of coastal and island peoples have carried vivid accounts of lands that vanished beneath the waves. In Australia, Aboriginal communities speak of a time when the shoreline stretched far out to sea, recalling in precise detail the locations of now drowned freshwater springs and sacred sites where their ancestors once lived. Along the Pacific Northwest coast, Native American tribes preserve powerful histories of great floods that reshaped their world, stories of waters rising to reclaim familiar valleys and forests. These narratives are far more than symbolic myths. They are cultural memories preserved with remarkable fidelity across hundreds of generations, and they often align with stunning accuracy with the scientific timeline of post-glacial sea level rise. The description of a specific river mouth that is now underwater, or a hunting ground that is currently miles out to sea, is not a coincidence. It is a historical record of a landscape that people actually inhabited and witnessed changing. This realization is forging a powerful new partnership. Scientists are now actively collaborating with indigenous knowledge keepers, learning to listen to these ancient stories as maps. The elders' words can point researchers toward specific, promising locations on the continental shelf, guiding expensive and complex underwater surveys with a wisdom that predates the very technology being used. This collaboration represents something deeper than just a more efficient research method. It is a profound reconciliation of scientific inquiry with ancestral wisdom, an acknowledgement that the full story of human migration is not just buried in sediment, but is also a living, remembered history carried in the voices of the descendants of those first explorers. These stories provide the human heartbeat to the cold data of geology, giving names, purpose, and emotion to the archaeological evidence we recover. The search for our submerged past is becoming a unified quest where the sonar's ping and the elders' song are guiding us together toward a more complete understanding of our shared journey. The search for these drowned worlds begins not in the water but with a map, a very special kind of map. Paleogeographers are the master cartographers of our deep past, and their work is to digitally roll back the oceans. They use complex models, stitching together three vital strands of evidence. The first is the global sea level curve, a timeline of the ocean's rise pieced together from ancient coral reefs and ice core data. The second comes from sediment cores, long cylinders of muck pulled from the seabed that act like a geological diary, revealing when an area transitioned from a freshwater swamp to a brackish estuary, and finally to the open sea. The third piece is the detailed topography of the continental shelf itself, charted by sonar. By combining these, they can reconstruct a coastline with astonishing detail, not as a simple line on a page, but as a vibrant, living landscape. These maps reveal a world of intricate river deltas, sheltered lagoons, and sprawling estuaries. And this is the crucial insight: these were the prime real estate of the ancient world. A river mouth was more than just a place for fresh water. It was a natural hub, a confluence of resources where the bounty of the land met the wealth of the sea. It offered predictable migration routes for animals, rich beds of shellfish, and stones perfect for tool making. These were the very spots where early people would have established their most enduring camps and settlements. So, by identifying these long-lost ecological hotspots on a paleo map, archaeologists are handed a strategic guide. It transforms a seemingly endless continental shelf into a focused set of high-probability targets. This scientific cartography is the indispensable first step, turning a blind search into a calculated hunt for the places our ancestors once called home. The stones and sonar maps tell one story, but a second, even more personal record is written within us. Our very DNA carries the indelible map of our ancestors' journeys. While ruins offer physical proof of where people lived, genetic code reveals how they moved and how they were connected. By carefully comparing the DNA of modern populations with genetic material recovered from ancient individuals, scientists can trace the routes and timing of human migrations with a precision that stone tools alone cannot provide. They focus on two specific types of genetic heritage: mitochondrial DNA passed down through the maternal line and the Y chromosome passed from father to son. These act like unbroken family threads stretching back tens of thousands of years. As groups split off and journeyed into new lands, their genetic lineages branched like a great family tree, and we can still read those branches today. For the coastal migration theory, this genetic evidence is particularly powerful. It often reveals a distinct signal of rapid population expansion along coastlines. This is not the slow, meandering pattern of inland exploration, but the swift, decisive pulse of people who are moving efficiently by water. The genetic diversity found in indigenous populations across the Americas and the islands of Oceania, for example, provides a timeline that aligns perfectly with these epic coastal voyages. This biological data stands as an independent witness, a story written in our blood that directly corroborates the archaeological finds and the paleogeographic models. It tells us not just where people went, but when they arrived and how they remained linked to the communities they left behind. It confirms that these were not isolated, accidental events, but a continuous, connected saga of exploration that shaped the entire human world. A long coastal voyage hinged on one simple, non-negotiable element: fresh water. For ancient mariners navigating the newly flooded continents, every sip was precious. The most vital landmarks on their mental maps were not mountains or rivers, but something far more subtle and essential: freshwater springs bubbling up from beneath the seafloor itself. These hidden oases, where pressurized aquifers forced pure water up through cracks in the rock, created pockets of drinkable water right along the saltwater coast. Imagine the profound relief of a weary group finding one of these springs, a place where they could refill their containers without a difficult trek inland. The presence of such a source would transform a random stretch of coastline into a natural rest stop, a strategic hub for generations of travelers. Today, we can trace the ghosts of these ancient wells. Geologists analyze sediment cores pulled from the seabed, looking for layers rich in freshwater plant fossils or minerals that only form in low salinity conditions. They can even detect subtle salinity anomalies in the water column above, a faint chemical signature of a spring that has been dormant for millennia. Identifying these points on a paleogeographic map is like finding the ancient equivalent of a highway service station. It tells archaeologists exactly where to look for the material proof of human presence, for the scattered stone tools and the buried remnants of shell fires that mark a temporary camp. This practical search for water grounds the epic story of migration in the most fundamental human needs. Our ancestors did not move across the globe in abstract lines on a map. They traveled from one life-giving source to the next, their entire journey guided by the simple, relentless search for a drink. The engine of this entire epic was a planet rebelling against its own cold. The end of the last ice age, beginning around 20,000 years ago, was not a gentle thaw but a planetary upheaval. Global temperatures climbed, and the colossal ice sheets that had blanketed continents began to disintegrate, pouring unimaginable volumes of meltwater back into the ocean basins. This was not a steady, predictable rise. The oceans advanced in rapid, terrifying pulses, punctuated by sudden, mysterious pauses. In total, the global sea level climbed by over 120 meters, a vertical distance greater than a 30-story building. This was not a slow nibbling at the edges of the map. It was a wholesale redrawing of the world. Entire continents, like the vast Sunderland, were simply erased from existence. The familiar ground where generations had hunted, foraged, and raised their families vanished forever beneath a rising blue wall. This immense environmental pressure created a powerful catalyst for movement. As their ancestral homelands flooded, as freshwater springs turned brackish and hunting grounds disappeared, people were faced with a stark choice: stay and be displaced, or move with the changing world. This suggests that the Great Migration was driven as much by necessity as by curiosity, a story of resilience and adaptation in the face of a planet undergoing profound transformation. The ruins we now search for on the seabed are more than just archaeological sites. They are silent monuments to humanity's first great encounter with climate change. They are a powerful, enduring lesson from our deep past, reminding us that our story has always been intertwined with the restless nature of our world. These voyages required a vessel, a technology simple in form but revolutionary in its impact. The first great boats were almost certainly rafts, crafted from materials readily available in their tropical environments. Think of immense bundles of bamboo, lashed together with strong vines to create a stable, buoyant platform. These were not crude logs pushed into the surf, but sophisticated craft capable of carrying families, tools, and supplies for a planned journey. They could be propelled with paddles and, crucially, were resilient enough to ride the powerful ocean currents that would become their maritime highways. For shorter trips and calmer waters, simple dugout canoes, painstakingly hollowed from a single large tree trunk, would have provided agile and efficient transport. The true genius of these early mariners, however, lay not just in their boat building but in their navigation. They possessed a science of the sea, a living library of environmental knowledge passed down through generations. They learned to read the star compass, tracking the steady paths of constellations across the night sky. They understood the language of the ocean itself, feeling the subtle shift in swells that hinted at a distant landmass disrupting the deep water currents. The flight patterns of certain seabirds, which always returned to land at dusk, became a living map pointing toward unseen shores. Even the clouds took on meaning, with specific formations often gathering over the high peaks of volcanic islands still far beyond the horizon. This was wayfinding, a holistic form of navigation that integrated every available clue from the natural world. It transformed the open ocean from a trackless void into a familiar, readable domain. This mastery of maritime technology was arguably one of humanity's most pivotal achievements. It did not merely allow for the crossing of a single channel, it unlocked over 70% of our planet's surface. With these rafts and this profound knowledge, our ancestors ceased to be prisoners of their coastline. They became citizens of the world, their horizon limited only by their courage and their ever-improving skill to sail beyond it. While our ancestors mastered the open ocean, their journeys often began and ended in the safety of the shore. Caves along ancient coastlines were more than just shelter. They were homes, sanctuaries, and sacred spaces offering protection from the elements and potential threats. These natural stone chambers provided a stable, cool, and dry environment, ideal conditions for preserving the fragile traces of daily life. When the seas rose, the ocean did not simply flood these caves, it sealed them. Sediment slowly accumulated over their entrances, creating airtight time capsules locked away from the destructive forces of wind, sun, and biological decay. Inside, an extraordinary preservation process could begin. In the absence of oxygen, a state known as anoxia, organic materials that would normally rot on an open site can survive for thousands upon thousands of years. This is where the search moves from the open continental shelf into the silent, dark heart of the coastline itself. The most famous example of such a find is Hoyo Negro in Mexico, a deep pit within a submerged cave system. There, divers discovered the complete skeleton of a young woman, given the name Naya, who lived over 12,000 years ago. Her remains, along with those of ancient animals like saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths that had fallen into the same pit, were preserved in stunning detail. This single site offers a frozen moment from the end of the Ice Age, a poignant snapshot of a lost world. The pursuit of these underwater caves is one of the most demanding and perilous endeavors in all of archaeology. It requires a unique combination of advanced scuba expertise and specialized cave diving skills, navigating tight, pitch-black passages where a single error can be fatal. Yet the potential reward justifies the immense risk. A single sealed cave is not merely a repository for bones, it is a pristine archive. It can preserve pollen, plant matter, wooden tools, cordage, and even genetic material, offering an unparalleled, holistic window into the environment, diet, and daily reality of the first coastal peoples. Each one is a vault holding the untold stories of humanity's first great coastal chapter. The vast Caribbean Sea holds a different kind of migration mystery, one written across a scattered canvas of islands. These lush tropical jewels were never part of any continent, standing in permanent isolation surrounded by deep water. Their first human footsteps arrived remarkably late in our story, a mere 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, and they could only have come one way, by boat. This was the work of the Archaic Age colonists, a pioneering people whose origins remain one of the hemisphere's great debates. Did their voyages begin from the dense jungles of Central America, from the mighty river systems of South America, or did they island hop from a more northern starting point? The clues on dry land are frustratingly few, pointing to a profound truth. The most important evidence is not on the islands we see today, but on the shores they have lost. Since those first arrivals, rising seas have steadily encroached, swallowing the very bays and beaches where their fragile boats first made landfall. These submerged landing zones are time capsules. Preserved in the silt could be the shattered hulls of their dugout canoes, the distinct styles of their stone tools, and the remains of the plants and animals they carried as a transplantable lifeline. Each of these details is a genetic marker for their homeland. The story of the Caribbean is a perfect, self-contained laboratory for understanding maritime migration. It shows us that this was not a single event but a recurring human impulse, a pattern of bold seafaring that populated the world's most remote corners thousands of years before the first European sail appeared on the horizon. That horizon was more than a boundary, it was a question. While rising seas provided a powerful environmental push, the true story of the Great Migration lies in the profound psychological pull that drew humanity seaward. What compels a person to look upon an endless, empty ocean and feel not fear but possibility? The answer is woven from the deepest strands of human nature. An insatiable curiosity, that innate need to know what lies beyond the next hill, was magnified when that hill was a distant, hazy silhouette across the water. This was coupled with powerful social and economic pressures. As populations slowly grew along rich coastlines, competition for prime territories and resources would have intensified. The promise of untouched hunting grounds, of coastlines rich with shellfish, and of unique, high-quality stone for crafting superior tools provided a tangible, powerful incentive to seek new shores. But the drive was likely even more complex than simple resource acquisition. Oral traditions and spiritual beliefs may have played a crucial role, planting the idea of promised lands across the water, ancestral homelands or sacred spaces waiting to be rediscovered. This journey was never a mindless drift. It was a deliberate, calculated expansion, a testament to immense courage fueled by the same unquenchable spirit of discovery that would much later propel explorers to the poles and the moon. To understand this psychological drive is to reframe our entire view of these first mariners. They were not primitive nomads, but the visionary pioneers of their age, setting out on the single greatest adventure in the human story, an adventure that would ultimately populate the world. This journey of exploration carried an ecological shadow. As humanity's first great migration reached pristine new worlds, our ancestors stepped into the role of a keystone species, an organism whose very presence reshapes the entire environment. Their arrival was a seismic event for local ecosystems that had evolved for millennia in isolation. Equipped with sophisticated hunting tools and the controlled use of fire, these early people possessed capabilities that the native wildlife had never encountered. The evidence for this transformation is stark. On continents like Australia and the Americas, the timeline of human settlement aligns precisely with a wave of extinctions that swept away a spectacular bestiary of giants. Enormous marsupials like the Diprotodon, a wombat the size of a rhinoceros, vanished. In the Americas, the ground shook less frequently with the passing of massive sloths and formidable saber-toothed cats. While climate shifts also played a part, the arrival of a new, intelligent predator often proved the final, decisive pressure. This was not a story of malice, but of consequence, a natural outcome of a highly adaptive species entering a fragile system. The submerged ruins we search for today are more than just cultural archives. They are frozen ecological snapshots. Preserved layers of sediment can capture a moment in time, holding ancient pollen that reveals what plants flourished, and the bones of animals that roamed the landscape just before and then just after humanity's footprint was first etched into the soil. These sunken sites guard a dual record, chronicling both the ingenuity of our species and the profound, irreversible change we set in motion across the globe. The same ocean that guards our deepest history is also a frontier without clear laws. When a site lies beyond the 12 nautical mile limit of any single nation, who has the right to protect it or to tell its story? This vast area, the continental shelf where so many ancient settlements rest, exists in a challenging legal gray zone. While international agreements like the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage offer vital frameworks, their power is largely moral. Enforcing these rules across the immense, unpatrolled expanse of the sea is a monumental task, leaving countless sites vulnerable. The greatest threat often comes not from the elements but from human hands. Commercial treasure hunters and salvage operations frequently target these submerged landscapes, drawn by the potential value of intact artifacts. In their rush to recover objects that can be sold, they use destructive methods like dredging that shatter the delicate archaeological context forever. A single gold ornament pulled from the silt might fund their operation, but the true treasure is the site itself. The way that ornament lies in relation to a hearth, a tool, or a post hole. That context is the language of the past, and once it is broken, the story can never be fully read. This creates an urgent race against time, where scientists are not just explorers but also guardians, working to locate and document these ruins before they are lost to looters. But the challenge is more than legal, it is deeply ethical. These are not merely archaeological sites, they are the ancestral homes of living cultures. The recovery of objects, and especially the respectful treatment of human remains found in these underwater resting places, must be guided by collaboration with descendant communities. For indigenous groups, a sunken settlement is not a forgotten ruin. It is a chapter in their own family history, a place that holds deep cultural and spiritual meaning. The most responsible research now prioritizes partnership, ensuring that the pursuit of knowledge also honors cultural legacy and allows communities to reconnect with their own past. Protecting this sunken heritage is not a task for any one country or discipline. It is a shared human responsibility, a test of our ability to cooperate across borders and cultures to safeguard the first, fragile pages of our collective story. This relentless search for our origins carries an immense price tag. Unlocking the secrets of the deep is an extraordinarily expensive endeavor, where a single day of operation for a research vessel equipped with advanced sonar and remotely operated vehicles can cost tens of thousands of dollars. This is not a matter of renting a simple boat, but of funding a floating laboratory, its crew of technicians, and the immensely sophisticated technology that serves as our eyes and hands on the seafloor. Such high costs create a fundamental bottleneck, dramatically limiting the pace of discovery and leaving vast stretches of the continental shelf unexplored. Where does the money come from for this underwater time travel? The answer is a fragile patchwork. Critical funding flows from government grants awarded by national science foundations, alongside vital support from private philanthropic organizations dedicated to historical research. In a more complex partnership, the field sometimes turns to industries already working in the deep, such as oil and gas or telecommunications. These corporations conduct extensive seabed surveys for pipelines and cables, and on occasion, their data can reveal anomalies of archaeological interest, leading to collaborative investigations. A more recent and hopeful development is the rise of public participation. Through crowdfunding platforms and organized outreach, ordinary citizens can now directly support specific expeditions, transforming from passive viewers into active patrons of discovery. This public engagement is crucial because the return on this investment is not measured in gold or treasure, but in knowledge. Each recovered tool or mapped settlement adds a crucial, irreplaceable piece to the puzzle of human history. The central challenge is to articulate the profound value of this intellectual return, to convince both institutions and the public that understanding the very roots of our species' global journey is a worthy pursuit. The future of this entire field hinges on our collective willingness to invest not in what we can extract from the seabed, but in what we can learn from it. The very tools we use to search the deep are undergoing a quiet revolution, one that promises to illuminate our past with unprecedented clarity. Artificial intelligence is now being trained to comb through the staggering volumes of data captured by sonar surveys. These sophisticated algorithms can scan millions of data points, learning to recognize the subtle signature of a human-made structure amidst the natural chaos of the seabed. They can flag a potential wall foundation, a cluster of artifacts, or the geometric shape of a ceremonial platform, patterns that might easily escape the tired eyes of a human analyst. This is not about replacing scientists, but about giving them a powerful new partner in the search. At the same time, the hardware of exploration is becoming smarter and more agile. Imagine a future not with one large, expensive autonomous vehicle, but with a coordinated swarm of dozens of smaller, low-cost drones. These miniature UVS could deploy from a single ship, flying in a synchronized grid to map an entire ancient river delta in a fraction of the time it takes today. They would work like a hive mind, sharing data in real time to create a hyper-detailed, three-dimensional portrait of a lost landscape. The evidence we seek is also becoming smaller, down to the molecular level. A breakthrough technique involves sifting through sediment cores for environmental DNA. When ancient communities lived along a shoreline, they shed microscopic genetic traces through skin cells, hair, and other organic matter. These fragile fragments can bind to sediment particles and, under the right conditions, survive for millennia. By carefully analyzing these cores, scientists could one day detect the unmistakable genetic signature of human presence, confirming a settlement existed even if every stone tool and post hole has long since vanished. Even our view from space is sharpening. Advanced satellite sensors are now capable of detecting minute variations in the color and temperature of the ocean's surface. A large, submerged stone structure can influence local water currents and plant life, creating a spectral ghost image detectable from orbit. This allows researchers to scan entire coastlines from their desks, identifying promising targets for closer underwater inspection. Together, these emerging technologies are transforming a needle in a haystack search into a systematic, data-driven investigation. They are the keys that will unlock the vast archives of the continental shelf, suggesting that the next great discovery in human history may not be made by a lone diver in the murk, but by a silent, humming server in a lab or a flock of robotic explorers charting the darkness below. The dark, still waters of a Florida river hold a different kind of key to the past. While the open sea conceals entire landscapes, inland sites like those in the Aucilla River offer a perfectly preserved snapshot of the very people who navigated those lost coasts. Here, freshwater sinkholes and limestone ponds created a remarkable environment where the absence of oxygen arrested the process of decay. This allowed organic materials, from wooden tools to plant fibers and animal bones, to survive for millennia in a state of near-suspended animation. These are not grand cities, but intimate campsites, places where early Americans gathered, hunted, and processed their food. The discoveries are breathtakingly direct. Archaeologists have recovered stone tools lying in direct association with the bones of mastodons, immense Ice Age elephants. On these very bones, clear, deliberate cut marks tell an unambiguous story of human activity. These are not random scratches, but the evidence of skilled butchery, showing how these people efficiently processed a massive animal for food and resources. The dating of these sites pushes human presence here back over 14,000 years, a timeline that firmly places these communities along the ancient coastline when sea levels were far lower. This makes the Aucilla River sites a terrestrial proxy, a window into the daily lives of a culture whose primary coastal settlements now lie miles out to sea, buried under the Gulf of Mexico. The toolkits found here are incredibly telling. They include distinct projectile points and scraping tools, a technology adapted for hunting the great megafauna of the era while also working hides and wood. But these were not just big game hunters. The same sites reveal a diverse diet rich in turtles, fish, and freshwater shellfish, painting a picture of a highly adaptable people who expertly exploited the rich mosaic of resources found where land and water met. This is the crucial link. The Aucilla findings provide the tangible, dated evidence for the kind of sophisticated coastal culture that the migration hypothesis proposes. They give a face and a skill set to the ghostly populations we can only theorize about on the submerged continental shelf. They prove that these pioneers were not just passing through, but were established, resourceful communities whose legacy is written in the silt of a quiet river, waiting to be read. The true power of this story emerges not from a single discovery, but from the harmony of many different voices. A paleogeographic map reveals a long-vanished river delta, a perfect place for a settlement. A geneticist then finds a distinct lineage in modern populations that traces directly back to that same region. An archaeologist, guided by these clues, recovers a stone tool from the submerged shoreline, its style a perfect match for that era. And finally, an indigenous elder shares a story passed down for generations, a story that names that very river and tells of the people who lived there. On their own, each piece is a compelling clue, but woven together, they create an undeniable tapestry of human experience. This is the great synthesis where geology, biology, material science, and cultural memory all converge to tell the same epic. It confirms that our ancestors were not merely wandering, but navigating. This coastal migration was a deliberate, sustained strategy that unfolded over tens of thousands of years, a relay race of exploration where each generation pushed a little further, their success embedded in the very blueprint of our species. The submerged ruins are the final witness to this journey, the ultimate corroboration of a narrative we have pieced together from the safety of the land. Finding them is the act of closing the circle, of placing the last crucial piece into a puzzle that has been waiting at the bottom of the sea all along. This quest for ruins beneath the waves is far more than an archaeological hunt. It is our attempt to recover the lost prologue to human civilization. These silent, submerged landscapes are not merely relics to be catalogued. They are the original pathways, the foundational routes walked and sailed by our most distant ancestors. They are the very cradles of the interconnected global society we inhabit today. Every discovery, from a single stone tool on a drowned shoreline to the vast, ghostly outline of a sunken river delta, adds a new and vital verse to the epic poem of our collective journey. This story, pieced together from geology, genetics, and memory, carries a profound and humbling message about our shared origins. It speaks to an incredible resilience in the face of a changing planet, and it reveals a deep-seated, unquenchable drive to explore that is etched into the human spirit. With every technological leap, from artificial intelligence passing sonar data to swarms of aquatic drones, we stand at the brink of revelations that will further illuminate this hidden history. We invite you to continue following this unfolding journey of discovery, to reflect on the profound, invisible connections that bind us all across continents and millennia. What aspects of these ancient mariners' courage and ingenuity resonate most with you? Share your thoughts on their incredible voyage in the comments below, and thank you for diving so deep into the past with us.